Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We know that getting to Central Park is still pretty difficult for a lot of people. We want to continue bringing the park to you through longer 45-minute virtual programs that we hold on select Tuesdays and Thursdays, as well as our shorter, more informal 15-minute weekly walks held every Wednesday at 12:30. Thank you for joining us for another rendition of our weekly walk series. Today, we're going to be exploring the southern end of Central Park, which we have explored once in the past back in April with Brendan, as well as a few other visits where we've explored different specific locations in the southern end. We'll see a few things that we may have seen back in April, as well as see a few things that we hopefully haven't seen in the southern end, maybe just yet, or at least not in the winter time. We'll be together for about 15 minutes, and just about all the photos you're going to see, with the exception of a few, were taken by myself here in Central Park over the last week or so. All right, so we will jump right into our weekly walk. Before we do a little bit of housekeeping, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. As you probably know, I'm one of the members of the Central Park Conservancy, and we're the nonprofit that take care of Central Park, keeping it clean and green. Our mission being to really preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. So thank you again for joining us. As I'm sure a lot of you know, we're using Zoom. You're all probably Zoom veterans. If you do want to say hello, please use the chat feature. Be sure to also check the chat feature for upcoming links to future programs. You can find some of those links in the chat box now, as well as check back at the end of the walk and you can find those links again. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature, and my colleagues Jose, Juan, and Ian are all in the back end answering questions. Last thing you're going to see pop up are going to be a few visitor polls that I'm going to launch throughout the walk today. I actually will launch a quick poll right now as we're starting up. So once you vote in this, the poll will disappear and I'll share them in just a little bit. But as we're beginning our walk, I want to see what section of Central Park do you most often visit? Sure, we have plenty of people that are here weekly, maybe even daily. Some of us probably get to Central Park a little more seldom. But when you do visit, typically, where are you going to go? So I'll let everybody vote for that as we start up our walk. Again, taking a walk in the southern end of Central Park, and there's a lot to see here, so we're just going to cover a handful of things that are really special about the southern end. We're going to begin our walk on 59th Street, otherwise known as Central Park South, and we're going to begin at 6th Avenue, a sort of lesser used entrance to the park, but certainly very hustling and bustling with life, as we can see from the horse-drawn carriages and these pigeons which are taking flight just over to our left side, swimming right by our head. As we enter the park, we're going to walk down a staircase leading us to one of the most famous water bodies in Central Park, which we'll see in just a moment. As we do come down, we are going to walk on this nice shadowy and snow-covered path. And as we walk down this path, we can reflect on a warmer time, thinking back to the spring and summer when this area looks very different. This area during the spring and summer will start to see azaleas and rhododendrons blooming, and these plants will add different color to the walkways. But even though we're walking by in winter doesn't mean it's still not beautiful. We can still find other color, mostly green, in the form of a few different shrubs that lie around, like yew, as well as Japanese holly, which will produce some types of nice little flowers or colors in the form of either little red arrows, which kind of look like berries on the yew, or the Japanese holly, which typically produce some type of little bud and flower, which is pretty during the spring season, but they're still nice to appreciate during the cold winter season as well. And as we continue walking along, we can take a glance out to our left and start looking over that snow-covered body of water, the pond, one of the most visited bodies of water in Central Park. And as we walk down, we can kind of look back, and I like to see at this time the sun battling against those buildings of Central Park South, fighting through just a little bit to squeeze some sunlight past the Park Plaza Hotel on the left, coming out onto that snow-covered pond. And as we walk down a little bit out of the shadowy section of Central Park South, we can start making our way just a little bit north to a more sunny landscape, looking over that large cluster of Manhattan mica schist, the bedrock of New York, which looks great covered in snow. You can also look closely and actually see somebody being a little adventurous up there and actually climbing on top of this snow-covered rock side. We'll visit another fun rock to climb in just a little bit. But as we walk up, we will start to see some thought out portions of the pond, as well as a very beautiful piece of architecture. That piece of architecture we're walking up to is none other than the Gapstow Bridge. As we can see here, in a different season. This, of course, not being our current view of the Gapstow, but this being a view of the Gapstow Bridge back in April. This was actually one of the sites we got to see on the first ever weekly walk, which was around April 29th, when Brendan led you through the southern end. So we're happy to be coming on almost a year of weekly walks and revisit some of these first-time landscapes. But of course, a very different look of the Gapstow Bridge during winter time. This bridge really taking the shape that we know it as today around 1874, and certainly being a very beautiful and picturesque backdrop. If you're a movie fan, you might remember this as the ending location for the 1992 classic Home Alone 2, where Kevin gives a turtle dove to the pigeon lady and the camera pans out showing this beautiful bridge as the backdrop. While this has certainly been the view for countless pictures and movies, it's important to remember the park was not always so picturesque. This area in particular was really eroded and degraded at one point. The Central Park Conservancy formed in the 1980s to correct things like this, to bring the landscape back to a more naturalistic site and to bring back some of that traditional architecture that once existed. Thankfully, today we have a very Hollywood-looking border to the pond, providing beautiful views for us and beautiful water bodies and ecosystems for plenty of the birds that like to stop by here. And just like the celebrities that film movies in the park, sometimes celebrity birds stop by. This is a shot from 2 years ago in 2019 of the famous mandarin duck that like to call the pond and the Gapstow Bridge home. So fun to look through both history and current times and see who and what you might see around this area. But certainly a very beautiful park as we walk through in present day, coming just around the Gapstow area. And now we'll actually start continuing a little west, and we'll actually walk over the Gapstow Bridge. Coming over the Gapstow Bridge, we're in the sun and we can look back on that shadowy area where we were just standing, enjoying the nice view of the ducks and mallards swimming around. As we continue walking west, we'll come along some more beautiful snow-covered landscapes and some nice kind of vine or vegetative covered trees over here on our right. And we'll start coming up to a little bit more crowded of an area now. So we bear off to the right, we can see a little bit of a crowd forming and they're looking over at something. Any guesses as to what they're looking over? They're looking over is certainly a very famous sight to see in Central Park during the winter time. One that a lot of people associate with Central Park in the wintertime, which is ice skating. Ice skating is a really fun activity, and it was one of the first activities done in Central Park. Of course, today, ice skating occurs primarily on the man-made rinks, like Lasker Rink up in the northern section, Central Park. The Woolman Rink opened around 1950, and it was a huge hit ever since. Coming from the donation of a generous philanthropist, Kate Woolman. Kate Woolman's donation allowed this beautiful rink to open in 1950, and from that day on, it has been very popular. This being a picture from the New York Times from December 25th, 1950, opening day or opening year, Christmas Day, with countless people lining up to go ice skating. And of course, a huge, huge hit right from the start. This being a decade later in 1960, and this photo coming from the New York City Municipal Archives, but just showing some of the life existing here at Woolman Rink. And of course, Woolman Rink would go beyond just traditional ice skating, and we'd actually eventually see it even be used for figure skating. This is a picture of Geraldine Husing, a competitive figure skater, pictured here in Woolman Rink, January 21st, 1954. And about 10 years after this, we'd actually see the first annual figure skating championships being held at Woolman Rink. Cool little piece of history that is still utilized today. As we start to say goodbye to Woolman Rink and the people enjoying this beautiful day for ice skating, we'll continue walking west in the park, coming just under Drip Rock Arch. Before we do continue though, I will just end that poll and share the results. And it looks like a lot of people like to visit the Mid Park, which actually is going to be a surprise to me. I would have imagined South End or even North End to be the winner. But Mid-Park's extremely beautiful. Of course, depending what you're considering Mid-Park, you might have the Bethesda Terrace area considered in that general spot. You're gonna have great things like the Ramble and Belvedere Castle. So it's easy to see why Mid-Park is a favorite for a lot of people. So we'll continue just going through Drip Rock. And as we come through Drip Rock, it is winter time, it is cold out, but that doesn't mean that things are slowing down in any way. And every twist and turn, every archway you go under, you'll hear new life, new culture of New York City. And right here, we walk by a wonderful little snowy landscape violin player, adding a little bit of just melody and rhythm to our walk and stroll through the park. Really sunny, really beautiful, and really nice sights and sounds as we continue through this western path. And continuing to a shadier area, we can see another large rock outcropping. This rock outcropping is known as Umpire Rock. As we walk a little bit closer, we can actually see some white marks on the rock. Those aren't the remainders of snowballs from a snowball fight, but rather chalk. And that chalk is actually from rock climbing, more specifically, bouldering. Bouldering is an activity that is like rock climbing, but uses no cables or no protective equipment besides the padding you can see on the bottom here. And it involves climbing a rock using more skillful handholds or lesser used spots, basically using the most difficult route you can to try to get up the rock. And lots of groups will form here during the warmer months, not only teaching people, but just having a fun time bouldering Umpire Rock from every which way. A fun activity that's been going on in the park for quite some time. As we can see today, a little snowy, a little wet, not really anybody bouldering, but there is a different type of almost extreme sport occurring here. We have some adventurers up on the rocks using Umpire Rock as a slippery snow slide. A little bit of a drop off over here, but again, you have to be a little adventurous to enjoy some of the funner aspects of the park. As we walk around, we can of course see other people enjoy, or other animals, other park patrons, I guess I could say, enjoying the rock area, having a little fun with its own miniature rock slide over here. But as we continue walking around, we can get some nice warming views as we start to make our way past the building, getting that sun hitting us. And we can actually follow our adventurers here on the bottom left up the little creative route that they're taking on top of Umpire Rock. So following our adventures, we can come up a little slippery but worth it way to start making our way over Umpire Rock, looking just briefly back at the Heckscher ball fields behind it, which is what gives Umpire Rock its name. Baseball diamonds just behind it, making Umpire Rock a great spot to view over the fields. As we walk just past Umpire Rock over here on our left, we're going to make our way to our final stop for this walk in the southern section. So as we make our way back onto the shadowy pass, we'll only be there briefly as we come out to some warmer, sunnier sections. And as we make our way just down this path, we can bear off to the right, walking on a little bit more of a snowy, lesser seen off-road type path. Before we continue down this path, I am just going to launch the second poll I wanted to, which is similar to last week's poll. You joined us last week for the conservatory water. One of the things I was talking about is how there's so many things existing in that area that anytime you ask what reminds you of this area to somebody, a different thing might be thought of. It's really similar in the southern section. There's so many amazing features, so many amazing pieces of art, fun activities to do, and so on, that a lot of different things come to mind. So I want to launch a poll. What reminds you most of the southern end of Central Park? I was only able to put a handful of things on this list. This is multiple choice, so you can vote in multiple. And of course, I had to put other as an option because there's no way we're gonna fit the entirety of things you can see or fun things in the southern section in one survey. So feel free to vote in that, and I'll share the results in a few moments. But for now, we'll make our way to our final stop, walking over this snow, bringing us to a beautiful view of a favorite arch of mine, at least in the southern section of the park, Pine Bank Arch. Pine Bank Arch is a really beautiful cast iron arch, and it's one of 5 remaining in the park of the original 7 that once existed throughout Central Park. This is a really cool piece, though, that was constructed in the 1860s. And as we walk a little bit closer, we can see some of the beautiful decoration existing on Pine Bank Arch. This, like Gapstow Bridge, has been used in a few movies and famous pictures as well. One that might come to mind, very fitting during the winter time, is if anybody has seen the movie Elf. The movie Elf actually has a famous scene here. It's the snowball fight scene. So very appropriate to have some snow covering the ground as we visit Pine Bank Arch. And as we walk just past this, we can think back to how far along Pine Bank Arch has come. It was created well over 150 years ago, so you can imagine it's needed to be fixed up a bit since then. This is a photo of some restoration work done to Pine Bank Arch that actually comes from the Library of Congress. This being a 1980s photo that shows some of the work that the Parks Department helped to do on this bridge, making sure it's nice and sturdy so today we can walk over this really beautiful piece of history. And as we walk under it this time, we can enjoy some of the subtle views, a favorite of mine, the light and sun just shining through that beautiful restored wood, which we just saw being restored in a photo about 30 years ago. And of course, this has had some restoration work done. The Central Park Conservancy actually restored this again in the early to mid 2000s. Of course, replacing any needed parts and keeping this safe for us to walk both on top of and under. And as we walk under, we can see where Pine Bank gets its name from. The pine trees that are existing just on the edge of this beautiful archway. These being eastern white pines, a very common one to see in Central Park and all throughout New York. The one that give just a beautiful glow as the sun is shining on them. Before we end, I do want to just launch that, end the poll and share the results. And what we can see is, cool, I like seeing some interesting results. Again, not something that I might have directly expected, but a lot of people are voting for the zoo. So again, a different things comes to mind when you think of Central Park South. When I think of the southern end of the park, I a lot of times go directly to the pond or maybe even the Hallett Nature Sanctuary or some of these natural areas. But a lot of people think of things like the zoo. You can imagine the playgrounds. There's even maybe lesser known things like how Woolman Rink, when it's done becoming an ice skating rink, turns into an amusement park. So there's a lot of things existing in every season throughout the southern end of Central Park. Fun to see what we all think of. But cool results there. Nice. So we're going to come to our final stop now, which is going to be right around this area. But I figured this view is really beautiful, but we can make it just a little bit more beautiful by getting a little bit of that beautiful Pine Bank Arch in there. Kind of showing a little bit of everything we've seen, everything from the beautiful flora, like the evergreen shrubs and trees, a little bit of that snow-capped rock, the Manhattan mica schist that is literally just growing Central Park, as well as some of the beautiful architecture like that Gapstow Bridge made of stone, and a little bit more kind of modern of a material with this cast iron bridge of Pine Bank Arch. Beautiful views no matter where you look in the southern end and no matter what season you visit in. This does bring us to the end of our walk, this being, of course, the map and the route that we walked today. I do want to thank you so much for joining us. We again love doing these walks, and we have a whole bunch of upcoming programs. Kind of announce some of the programs we have. We do have tomorrow, March 4th, a winter tree tour of the Great Lawn. So if you want to learn more about trees and IDing them in the winter time, visit me for that tomorrow, Thursday, March 4th at 3 p.m. We also do have Tuesday, March 9th, a Seneca Village tour, a really great historical tour, as well as Tuesday, March 16th. We're going to start off for the first time a Northern Forts virtual tour. First time it's being offered in a really cool historical tour. Following that, we also have next Wednesday to kind of get you in the mood for it. We're going to have a weekly walk of the Northern Forts area, an area we have visited once before, but again, one that will change up, going to be different from the first time we saw it. On top of that, plenty of other great things. We do have a Behind the Park series that's going to be March 17th at 3 p.m. Again, a lot to digest there, but if you do check the chat box now, you can see the links for all of those programs being dropped there. We, again, do have plenty of other great ways to stay connected on our website, but we love doing these virtual programs, and we hope you'll join us for more. Again, we have that Northern Forts weekly walk next Wednesday at 12:30. Plus a handful of all those longer, really great virtual tours. I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Please, again, join us next week for more virtual walks and weekly walks. I am going to leave this open for a few minutes in case anybody has any last minute questions. We can get to those. But again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. From all of us here at the Conservancy, stay safe, be well, and we'll see you soon.